Well, my name is Lora Novellino,
Mm-hmm.
and my title is Cannabis Entrepreneur.
Okay, so like 25 year.
Cannabis Entrepreneur. So it's, I am CEO, minister. I am a minister,
Yeah.
Lord, yeah. So it's CEO, minister, chef, a cannabis executive chef, and mentor, consultant. I no longer have with the retail, but yeah, I mean, I'm an activist too. Everything that involves cannabis, I'm still like to be involved in. And so now it's also about talking and speaking and doing, education for me, and getting that out. Now taking all of this and being able to build curriculums, hopefully finding right people to build schools, and put people in. So when young entrepreneurs come to me, I can say, here's a place you can go to learn a trade. This is how you can learn how to do it in a commercial industry to be able to get it, so that when people are buying these pieces of property and they're getting into these businesses, they not only know how to start it, but they know how to run it, and they know how to get through inspections and licensing and permitting and understanding what's needed. There's so many jobs that are needed right now. So many, and you only have but to go to a few sites to realize there are hundreds of jobs that are popping up from the need, just from the basic need of all of these businesses that are opening up. And when they don't have this workforce to work behind them, that could kill a business. So you see a lot of people also being able to go down, but when you can't even get out the gate, but you're paying all of your rent, it's also hard to hire people. And so it's a mess.
Yeah.
It's a mess. I mean, basically, it's 25 years in this industry. 37 years in the food industry, and we've owned and operated, on a 360-degree level of cannabis. And so where I'm at now is just being a minister and educating, but it's, owning one of the first hydroponic stores to, dispensary, having, a top 10 dispensary in LA in 2000, just setting and pioneering. Whenever it goes into everything, it's just, there's so much that we've done, or I've done. Right now, it's having a 15-year-old edible company. And where we're at right now is where I've already, it's like we say in this industry, it's a hurry up and wait. As a manufacturer, it's foods, and it's all different kinds. I put the first commercial kitchen in LA that's annually licensed, and I only shut it down earlier this year, which I'm kind of regretting right now.
Well, like THC edible flavor?
I did what wasn't done yet. So what, outside of coming in, and we put one of the first we took the hydroponic store, and when I say we, it's me, my husband, my family, mainly my husband, with cannabis. I thought I was going to music, and, we ended up in cannabis. And so it started with owning a hydroponic store, taking it out of the back of High Times magazine, sticking it into, in a little shop, and, being one of the good old boys back in the day of, selling equipment to grow weed with. Okay, even though hydroponics were legal, then everybody knew it was, for cannabis. But it was going from that to opening up another huge hydroponic store and kind of setting a precedence and whatnot. And it was also in cultivation. So then we opened up helped open up the first hydroponic store in San Pedro, and that moved to opening up Piece of Green, which was considered what we call a pre-ICO collective, okay, or POG, and then we moved from there to open up Harbor Area Caregivers Club.
What is a ICO collective?
Pre-ICO is a collective that was brought on for LA, so this is only pertaining to LA cannabis. Okay, but pre-ICO was originally 187 collectives. Okay,
like that's
that
the
came
name
in.
of this.
Pre-Iterum Control Ordinance, which was basically the precedents or the guidelines for opening up, medical marijuana,
Right.
giving those people who registered by September 27, who opened up those shops to be able to come in and be able to grab licenses. Okay. Okay, then there was Prop D, Prop E, and Prop F that came along. And when those came along around in 2010, and this is when we had Harbor Area Caregivers Club, that was, legislation that basically allowed those particular to vote. Prop D was the measure that got passed. Okay, should have been Prop F. And then that would have allowed for many businesses to come into the market and be able to multiply and do what they needed to do. But the legislation, and the regulation, they passed legislation before regulation. Okay? So now you have kind of a everybody not really knowing, everybody just listening to the word weed in a proposition, so people vote. Prop D got passed, which basically put a monopoly on the industry in Los Angeles, okay, for the 187 collectives. Technically 137, but ended up being 187. Those pre-ICO collectives have until the end of this year to claim somewhat of a grandfather clock in, okay? Meaning that they were first permitted, the ability to do it, creating what? A monopoly. Okay, making it harder for other people to get into the industry after the fact in LA. Well, let's say that expires as of 2020, next year, and so now if you got all these court dates going on and people and then wanting to sue, you hear this, and all the raids that are going on is because they didn't make as much money as they thought they were going to make because of the black market.
Right.
Okay. So now since the city, Garcetti and all of them pushing Prop D, okay, which later became basically Measure M, tweaked. I'm kind of giving a roundabout version of this, okay. And so, but later turning into there, which allowed those companies to turn in and be taxed and, given the permitted ability to now go through this year. Next year, they become just like everybody else. So now you've got a lot of lawsuits that are saying, well, wait a minute, we didn't make as much money because you guys didn't go out and you enforced, and so now enforcement is coming in and wiping out more of the black market so that they can meet their quota. Kind of like when we were in the mountains and growing.
Take out the competition.
Yeah, well, take out the competition because now that they, put them in and they pass a legislation that everybody supposedly benefited out of, now those companies are suing the city that's saying you didn't put in enough, and so it's a battle that could have been avoided if they would have passed Prop F. Because then we would have been so much more mature in the weed industry, than where we're at right now. But anyways, we put up the pre-ICO collectives and whatnot, and Harbor Area Caregivers, where we brought in 40 strains. We had a partner with 80 acres up in Humboldt County, and 40-acre ranch in the Central Valley, and we built grow houses. This hydroponics store, we taught people how to grow, and we would go in and we'd build houses. And from whether it was a closet operation or teaching somebody how to plant, in their own backyard, to whether or not you're doing warehouses to fields, and so it's an industry, it's a science, it's a environment, it's a community. and so on top of that, we're also creating community centers where people can come and be able to get the education. And we're building stores, and we're building products, branding. Now the industry has evolved to where it's at. Right. And so all between this, though, I had a edible company, or have an edible company too. So when it gets to that point of moving on, we're now where we should be in federal regulations and USD regulations. And that's not something that's upon us until for another couple of years. So right now you got a lot of people scrambling into the industry to create products, right? And because that's where a lot of people are believing that the money needs to be able to go. But you have a lot of hurry up and wait in the industry when it comes to creating products, because you now have a set of regulations that you have to go through.
Right.
a lot of those are meeting complications because they just, weren't done right.
Yeah, it's like, it almost sounds like there's people that want to rush to get in before all the, let's say, paperwork and laws, whatever gets finalized, just while there's still some wiggle room in there. While concurrently, people that are already in are holding off because they don't know how, they don't want to maybe put another 2 steps into a new venture or whatever in the industry when it can just get like shut down in 6 months' time or whatever.
These are like when your friend, when you said he came in, he realized he got this far, he's paid this amount of money, and now he's realizing, whoa, wait a minute, this isn't as cracked up as what I thought it would be.
Yeah.
And it's not. And so anybody who's been in the industry, since the beginning is saying, heck no, I don't want to, this to turn around and wait it out because you're throwing away money. Okay, because anything can change and happen because we've reached beyond that. The biggest thing that I hear from government agencies and anybody coming in, the BCC and the, and LA Council and whatnot, is we don't know what that looks like. And the problem is that we do know what it looks like. It looks like the black market. And so, I always say it's government coming in and wiping out its own troops, because these black market and the people that are creating the dispensaries are what's helping fuel an economy to create more products and whatnot.
Right.
Because the culture of cannabis is an everyday take as needed. Okay, which, if you know, the average user is taking at least 3 times a day every day.
Which is me.
It's a life.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's more than that. Now that's the average user.
Yeah.
Okay? That's not, there are people that, they're running clinical trials again. They're rerunning the ad they did back in the day,
100 years ago.
Anybody want to smoke cannabis clinically? We're doing trials.
Yeah.
And people are like, oh, I'll smoke, I can smoke, And you have some people who get up, who smoke on a constant, having a joint every Snoop Dogg.
Yeah, right.
There are people that, but it's not something that puts people out of their mind, and it's not, the inerrancy is in the testimony of each individual user, and that's something that can't be denied for what it works and what it helps, and there's gazillion testimonies out there that make cannabis using good. The question is how you get it up off the ground. Cannabis is a lot bigger than what people think. It's not just a company. The bigger picture is changing the corruption. It's a weapon that's used to change the corruption of America, okay? The world, technically, but it's landed in America, and it's particularly landed in California, okay, who's can be able to pull a trigger on something that's a lot bigger. California government doesn't understand necessarily the culture, but they're trying to understand the business of it. We are Wall Street. LA is Wall Street. And it's a bigger Wall Street than Wall Street. And Wall Street's afraid of that, because Wall Street is nothing but pharmaceutical and huge, gigantic corporations making trillions of dollars off of, let's call it slave labor. You want to get into the prison.
Lack of a better term.
Yeah. It's all related. And yet, what technically is you look at countries like India, who have, phenomenal records now starting to grow, in an unprecedented amount of time, and that's because it's built on capitalism, on people going out and being able to sell wares, make a product, turn around, sell it, make a business, feed their families, bless the community, with their contributions, their tithes, and their, this is the way life should be, technically. Everybody living in a peaceful, Zion, however you want to call it. In a perfect world, at the end of the game of cannabis, that's really what it is, because it really turns into the barter system. You know this when you own so many businesses in this industry and everybody is willing to work for you for weed. Literally.
Yeah.
There is the, from putting in your electricity to, giving you free cable to, giving you 7 boxes of cables, and we'll stock your home too, and all you got to do is give us a pound of weed. At the end of the game, it's all about the barter system because everybody's growing, but there's so much more you can do with it. Between the fuel, the hemp. If you really want to know how to cure climate control, grow hemp. And who grows the hemp? You can plant it in every single college across the United States. And everybody can receive funding for that. And be able to put those in and be able to teach and trade. It starts with the tech schools. It starts with the colleges, as far as building. You have to teach farmers. You have to teach people how to work in this industry. It's people like Jenny that come, or, even your friend, they reach a point and they get in. Everybody's got the green little flag, and planting it down on the plot, and then they start building and doing, and eventually everybody comes to a fence.
Yeah.
That's including Canada, that's including Oregon, Washington, that's including the tribal commune, here in California. Everybody eventually comes to a border where they outgrow what it is that they're creating. Okay, to the point that the prices start to get lower and lower and lower. Trump closing off the border stopped Jamaica from filtering it in at $1.18 a gram, because technically that was where their goal was going to be at, was to be able to bring in trade into there. What's going on and around the world, this is so much something that's bigger. You have to make the government understand how much of a bigger weapon that cannabis is against the corruption and flipping everything else, in order for your buddy to finally have a successful business and a regulated, legal, what is good for the people market. Other than that, he never will have a fair deal. He can go and he can make something, but he's going to reach a fence where he's not going to be able to put anything outside of that borders or create or do. Or at this day and age in the LA industry, you can't even open up your doors yet.
Yeah, exactly.
And so you're stuck in a position where you're going to end up homeless before you end up being in that business. And that I speak from experience, because that's exactly what happens when you're playing a legal game. Because every business I ever did was done under legality. I paid taxes when I didn't have to pay taxes. But it was just to say, let's set up a business in Los Angeles. I'm a serial entrepreneur. And so that's how my father was, that's how I am. And it's just seeing, okay, how far? When you get into the business of cannabis and you have not only the supply, the pick and shovel shop, okay, but now you've also got the people that it is that you're training yourself and you're putting into business for the farmers, the companies you're creating, the edible company that's helping supply. There were no people you could pluck out of a phone book when we were building these businesses, so we had to become our own businesses, okay? To the point, this is where you're trading, weed for printing supplies, so you could print labels. This is where you're doing. I always say you always have money. You always have something when you have cannabis. You always do. That's the kind of like, I know there's got to be a sermon in there for tithing in there. But I'd always say I'm never afraid of making money. This is something you can never explain to investors, okay? Because they're like, what's the bottom line? There is no bottom line when it comes to cannabis. There's no imagination that can be held on cannabis that you can do, because you can use everything in that plant for something. And it can evolve into other things, and it is perfect in all of its natural ways. Climate change can be, how do you change in such a short amount of time? Let people plant. If all of California and all of Canada just planted alone, you would already have a shift in the climate. Another thing, everybody's thinking oil. Most of your growers are going in and they're thinking, okay, as long as I have, these are the oil companies, your cultivators. But there's so much more you could do than just oil with it. There are people that you can fuel. Canada is doing researches for fueling vehicles. There's so much more that's added to it that you can think that when I do get a young entrepreneur that says, how do I get into this industry and what product can I create? I always say, what do you do? Because whatever you do, I can tell you how to do it in cannabis. Okay? There's so much education that needs to get out there for people to understand how to use it. From simply lighting a pipe to being able to make a batch of brownies to being able to use exactly the right dosage. Okay? But in understanding, you know, by what you see, those are things. People's stories need to be heard for people to relate to how to use and what to use and when to use, or even why to use. You know, it's not for everybody, but I always say, you know, when someone comes, tell me what your passion is, you know, before you indulge in cannabis, because before you know it, you'll be preaching and teaching and you had no idea you were going to be a minister, but that's how deeply involved it gets. Cannabis is God's medicine, and eventually he takes us all to servitude. You know, that's what I always say with the congregation. When we're passing around a joint, all you have to do is pass it around, and everybody takes it, and that's a form of connection, okay? And everybody gets in a conversation, because the moment you meet somebody that says, hey, I use cannabis, you're already a brother, you know? There's that particular connection. If you go to, you know, in the cannabis industry, when we did manufacturing and whatnot, you know, and you had different brands and there was no competition. It was everybody enjoyed what other people were doing. And everyone thought everybody deserved a chance to be able to get involved and do something that was special and try it out. It's like a potluck.
Right.
Potluck. Everybody bringing something to the table and everybody reveling and marveling in what it is that they're doing to give a step up to do something. You know, that's how the industry was when it was illegal. You know, there was more of a brotherhood. Now that it is sad, because it's, you know, people are more up in the competition, but more people are just being taken advantage of. And that's the sad part of what I see. Most people who are just like regular people, I have an idea. I want to go out. I've got enough money to buy 2 eggs. I'm going to keep 1 egg. I'm going to take the other egg and I'm going to sell it for twice as much and go buy another. And I'm going to keep doing this till finally I have an egg stand. And I'm able to feed my family and I'm able to pay my rent. And then I'm able to give back to my community. And I'm able to mentor another person who comes along who says, hey, that's a wonderful job. You know, this is how commerce starts. And a healthy community is based on ownership. And the ownership of having businesses that people give back and going, and each person thrives. And that's the reason why, you know, you need to have just as many as the legal shops. They're showing us just how many shops are needed in each community. In some communities, you don't need as much. But that's where the healthy competition comes in, okay? I mean, you can put a gas station on every single corner and it's legal. Right. To be able to, you know, go around and they'll just compete with prices and doing, okay? But I guarantee every single gas station on that corner is making money, okay? In other words, they're not there. And that's the same as just having same marijuana businesses, okay? Right. It brings in a lot more. The only way you're going to be able to recirculate after you grow outside of your boundaries is to be able to have more. Now you have to consider the average user uses marijuana daily on a minimum of 3 times a day. That's a lot of weed if you figure how many people continually smoke. So when you hear there's weed shortages and, you know, people aren't doing, or you're going to have to, you know, destroy and do it, and that creates a tug in the economy, that's legalization. That's what it looks like.
And it's so funny to think, because normally when you say corporatization, quote unquote, that's normally thought of as like cutthroat, this and that. Whereas, like, I feel like it wouldn't necessarily need to be, but that's usually how it's looked at. And it's funny how, like, you say that, that's exactly what marijuana's become. What's become corporatized. It's become
exactly.
Cutthroat.
It has become, and it was never, and that's why I said where it comes back. So if you ask any old hippie, you know, what's your take on it, they would say, you know what, I would love to go back to being the outlaws. I don't call it illegals, I call us outlaws, because that's what we do. You know, we've always had to live on the border. It was always for the people. When you're really in this industry, you understand what it is you're doing, and you have no problem giving back. There isn't a grower that I have never met that has been ever so stingy with his weed that actually gives away a portion to his weed to the people who need it. Hippies and bohemians and people who travel, nomads, you know, I always think if you really want to give a person, a homeless person who does not want to go to work, a job, send them on the road to go trim weed. I guarantee they will do it, and they will do it because they will have a roof over their head, they will have some happy times, they will go around, and they can trim for days. And how do they usually get paid back in the day? Through weed. Making an ounce of weed, a pound of weed. If they needed money, they would go turn around and they would go sell it to their friends. And they would sell, but they would always be retaining a portion for what they would use, give away a portion of that, and create wealth on there. You got cannabis, you've always got money in some form, fashion, or way.
Right.
Always, everything, whether it's a seed, because people nowadays, you know, let's say a thing about seed and cultivation and babies and plants and clones and, you know, and there's a whole nother industry that died out with the legal industry. You know, growers used to be able to bring in plants to be able to give to all these Prop 215 patients that had the ability to grow their own plant. Where do they get their plants from now? They don't. You know, it's created a feed. They used to be able to come to the dispensaries and be able to pick out plants and to learn how to grow. You know, and
you buy like clones. I never see that anymore. Like buying clones.
There used to be shops that were set up just specifically for clones. Not only did they sell to the dispensaries, but they sold to people. Some were at a wholesale level. There's your nurseries, you know, and those are being brought out corporatized. As you should say. Now they grow clones in a petri dish. Right. So you can grow over 2,000 clones and do it all from the single mom, so you can, you know, get to the most, you know, perfect strain that you can without having all of the resemblances. Cannabis is perfect in its own way. It's just about discovering what is. But cannabis now today that's created on such a mass machine, you've taken it out. You've turned it into a pill.
Yeah, it takes the artist there.
Yeah, the artistry. And hemp con and cannabis cup and all of those are things to be prideful of. Growers get into that. They're artists. They grow the most miraculous. There are photographers and, you know, people that go, it's a whole nother way of living that feeds people's passion. All of that dies with being corporate. All of it. So you've taken the beauty out of cannabis, of what it was really meant to be. But honestly, this is my philosophy and prediction and opinion, is that you'll never be able to catch up with the black market. Therefore, you'll never be able to eradicate the black market. What you have to realize, what they have to do with the black market, is license them, permit them, and educate them. That's what needs. They need to be turned into community centers. They need to be turned into churches where people can come and be able to gather and get education and knowledge. They need to understand, you know, most of the people that are actually walking around there that, you know, we consider homeless or the lowly or people who need education or need help, you know, where they've always come is be able to come to the church and community. A lot of them don't have the ability to get on YouTube and be able to study and see what's out there. And even if you do, most of it is being littered with, here, let me teach you how to make a business, or let me teach you how to do this. People take your money these days, you know. I always say, shoot, for the price of, I give you the information for free because I want to see people succeed and make a business, okay? But if you do need to pay somebody, then fine, pay me that $100,000 that you've been paying for that lawyer to teach you how to get into a business, because I'll teach you how to get into business. What they don't teach you is how to stay in business, okay? They don't teach you about the trends that are coming. They don't teach you about what is going to be required after you reach this particular notch, because everybody lives on an assumption and made a conclusion that if you get in the cannabis industry, you're going to make a lot of money, okay? And it was all built upon an assumption that saying that whatever is coming into the door, let's count the heads, okay? Let's figure they're making this. Nobody ever counts what's going out the door and what a business has to pay. Now you look at legalization, you look at the regulations, you look at the permits and the fees and the licensing, and you think, how can you imagine paying that? When I see Jenny coming and saying, hey, I'm going to get into this business and I may have somebody that's coming. I once gave an investor back their money $30,000 or $13,000 because they thought coming into the edible game they can get in. This is going to be, they're going to make buku money. It's $13,000, and this is our whole life saving because from our pension and for what we're doing. And I gave them back the money because I'm like, $13,000, you can't get past 2 weeks with $13,000 in this industry.
Yeah.
Okay, you need to have a minimum of $250,000 just to pay. And right now, this industry is pay to play. Okay, and it's full of corruption. It's already been corrupted. And in order to do it, yeah, you do. You got to wipe them out. As I was saying earlier, Wesson's in there, taking away those 800. I feel sorry for all of those 800 applicants because they all had to buy property. They all had to lock in the leases. Some of them locked into 10-year, 20-year, 25-year leases. No problem. I'm going to make buku money. I can pay this off. Nobody thinks about, you go to Macy's and you see this, hey, get a credit card for 60% off. You're thinking about getting the 60% off at the moment, but you ain't thinking about the long-term interest that you're going to gain. Further down the line, 5 years later, you're still paying off that beautiful dress, and now you've paid at least 20 times more for it. This industry was made for people who can come up against Monsanto, Philip Morris, okay, because that's the game they're playing in right now. And they don't care about any other little, it's basically here, whatever the scraps are, you guys are going to collect, but you're only going to collect them so much and so far. And so you have to think, when I say somebody's going to build a product, you have to put the integrity into that product, okay, to make it last. Eventually what's going to happen is somebody bigger is going to come along, but Anheuser-Busch is going to come along and buy you out of your product and take that and stick it into a higher level. That's where they're at right now. And that's why I always tell people, what's your passion, okay? Because if this is what you think, and when people bring something in as a passion and they think, I'm going to have this for the long term, you often give it your all. You throw in everything, as we all did in this cannabis industry. The reason that we've been in here so long is because we've given everything to it. Our families, our relationships, every dollar that it is that we have had, and we're still haven't even gotten up off the ground. That's the sad part. Until you get to a point where you've lost it all, or you get so anxiety-ridden, you're tossed and you turn, you can't sleep at night, you've made contracts and deals with people who are unsavory, now you've locked yourself into something, you find yourself in a court date instead of finding yourself living up on, Malibu Hill, and it's just, and that's why I say it's understanding where the industry is at right now, and it's crumbling. You can read the news anywhere. MedMen has its issues, okay? You've got corruptions that are involved in there. You've got corruptions that are involved. What scares me most right now is Texas is now coming into the game. They're starting to hint about the legislation. Well, Nevada's doing well because Nevada doesn't have the regulations and the rules. In a way, it's old school cannabis, OG cannabis, because you're dealing with, people who've been dealing on an outlaw basis for pretty much its entire history. Yeah. So it's home. It's home to them. Texas comes in. This is where I see the warning and the vision of how corporation and big pharma comes in. Okay? Because most of your corporate companies are housed and lined in Texas isn't alone, but just hearing that this is my warning sign of saying, okay, here it comes. The feds are getting ready to flip the switch. And they're ready to flip the switch because now they're ready to turn around and come into game. Back in 2010, Philip Morris, took property up north. And and in Kentucky at the same time, outside of North Carolina, this, epidemic going on now with the vaporizers and the, and the THC levels and the, it's not just tea, it's really high nicotine levels. I mean, it's kind of a no-brainer, for people to take 20 times the amount, and most of your products these days in cannabis are built on THC. It's like, here, let's take the high out of the Vicodin, which is all Vicodin is just the high, and feed it to everybody. Well, didn't we once do this? Isn't this called the opioid addiction? Well, we're doing the same thing when we're doing it with the THC. This is why I believe in the full spectrum. This is why I believe in the whole plant. When someone comes to me and says are your edibles only CBD or are they only THC? I'd love to have a CBD. But now they're playing around with the THC levels, you can have 0.3% to the maximum level of THC and anything between 0.3%. This is new DPH regulations that just passed last week. I think it was October 30th. You can have, if any product is found, a CBD product found between 0.3% and 0.5%, that product must be destroyed.
The THC percentage?
In a CBD product.
Oh, okay.
So you know what that means? That means there's going to be a whole lot of products that are going to be knocked off the board, and those products now also have to go through regulation, okay? They have to go through testing, and even if it's in there, there's no reason you say, find me a grower who has a garden that has spent months preparing and planning, and as it's an art to them and doing, and then coming along and saying, you're over the percentage amount of a level, you have to destroy it all.
And it seems like such a minuscule percentage also, like there's no way that would even affect anyone if you had 0.04, 0.4% THC.
Because the levels are not where, they based it on a standardized of doing Colorado. As you know, Colorado doesn't rightfully have that title, okay? They took the title because in 2012, as our corrupt government does, LA wasn't able to step up to the pot where they should have, okay? And because they didn't do that and come out with the with the recreational and doing that, then Colorado standards came in. We used to laugh back in the day when people wanted to learn how to grow pot in Colorado because of the altitude, okay? We had to grow in pots when we lived in the altitude areas, okay? Because every place I've ever lived, I've always been an outlaw. When you enter cannabis, you're an outlaw. If you smoke cannabis, you feel like you're an outlaw. That's the way our society makes us feel. But we used to always talk tomatoes in the hydroponic industry because we weren't allowed. But tomatoes were perfect because I always say, if you want to know how to grow cannabis, all you got to do is know how to grow tomato, okay? Yeah. It's grown the same way. And tomato growers have been using hydroponic methods for years. And that's how they're able, I always used to laugh when Albertsons was one of the first stores that came in Vons followed, when they first started listing hydroponically grown on the vegetables. In other words, how do you feed a country so fast? That's why hydroponics became the choice of growing for cannabis. From 90 days, seed to table in 90 days. And it could be done. And and you just had to have methods, and it becomes a competition because there's growers out there. It's not just the art, but it's also they're creating something that's who doesn't want to be a Mr. Green Jeans from time to time, but when you are that way, you're seeing those changes and those differences, and so when a government tells you that you have to destroy a crop, it's like killing your babies, and it's harder. I always say that's what makes cannabis that elite plant, okay? And that's not given, that's known, that's its relationship with spirituality, okay, and cannabis. Because if you've ever, and I can't explain it, nobody can explain the experiences that you get from being able to walk through a garden or smoking cannabis or eating cannabis or however it is. You can't explain that because it's a personal relationship. You can't explain it no different than you can explain your relationship with God to other people. Nobody's ever going to get it because it's a personal fact. That's the reason why you can't put a dosage on it, because it's something that's needed individually for each and every single one of us. So when people are creating products and trying to come up with a particular type of dosage, that's the reason why it doesn't work. In the end, the product is going to outgrow it, or your client is going to outgrow the product. You follow me?
Yeah.
Okay, so, where it comes is, you need an unlimited amount of people making an unlimited amount of products, because there's an unlimited chef and being able to experience, and this is, I speak from experience, okay? This is my knowledge of being able to go around. The company is 15 years old, and it's research and development, and I'm not limited and bound by anything. I have my own commercial kitchen, or had recently, up until recently, my own commercial kitchen, which I licensed under a medical marijuana company, okay? And did everything before that time, and this was in 2013, that I incorporated the company and took over the commercial kitchen in 2015, 16. I think I started playing in there though, since the beginning days. But, licensed the kitchen and did this, and yeah, you had to build underneath their noses. So one of the questions I get asked by a young entrepreneur, is it better if I go legal or is it better if I stay illegal? The only way we've been able to build this industry is by doing it in an outlaw way. Because we have to show them that it can be done. So when they don't know what it looks like, we can show them what it looks like. And so when you're killing those people that are in an outlaw, you should be learning from those people so that you can hurry up the industry to catch up to where it needs to be in order for it to be fair for all. Other than that, it's already corrupt, and it's an industry that's not even worth getting into, because all you're doing is throwing dollars to the wind. But you can build another industry by taking it and being able to pioneer it and doing the things that need to, because eventually somebody's got to wake up. I think documentaries and getting the education and the messages out there are the most important thing that is needed right now in this day and time, so that people don't frivolously put their money away and put it into a business and then get to a point that they can't move any further, and then they're spinning their heads and they're asking themselves, why and how? I had a woman who opened up a dispensary in College Town, over by USC, something like that, right in the heart of College Town. And I looked at her, and she was a 60-year-old woman, and I said, how did you get into this industry owning a dispensary? Now, I've owned several dispensaries. I wouldn't want to own another dispensary if my life depended on it, not in this day and age, okay? I would like to direct one for a medical, because eventually the state should own medical dispensaries, technically, okay? Where this ends in business in the end is up to two people. And it's either going to be bought out by the state, or it's going to be bought out by people like Dubai, who are going to come in to be able to capitalize and put what on it, okay? Those are your only two buyers in the end.
It's either completely government owned or completely corporatized, is what you're saying.
At the rate we're going, where we're at. That's how you see for where it happens when in. And the reason that I know this is because I opened up every single one of those businesses that were all 360-degree related into the cannabis industry, and encountering every single issue and problem and legislation, but I did it all permitted, okay, before the integration. The sad part right now is you see a lot of people who went and bought vertical licenses and have no idea what to do with them. They have no idea what you want. All they know is that I'm going to buy the best of the best. We all do that. If I got the money, I'm going to go buy the glitter, And then when I get it, what do? It's kind of like the advanced nutrients thing. In the hydroponics shops, advanced nutrients was one of the first nutrients that came out that said, we're for weed. Okay, that's why they were blackballed in the industry. They were the black sheep of the industry because they did weed. See the resemblance? And so with advanced nutrients that came out, but advanced nutrients was so advanced that you really needed to be a chemist or a person of interest to grow a garden when you were using
those encyclopedia of weed, and it's like once you get into the growing, I'm like, shit, you really need to know like biology, botany, chemistry,
science
all of that.
It's already, and manufacturing edibles is the same way. It's chemistry. It's where chemistry and art meet. Just like cultivation, it is where chemistry and art meet. And so there's those two divine forces that if you do them just in balance, you get something that's so wonderful and beautiful. And yet if you do something a little bit more, but I would have, as an example, people that would come in, you'd have a wall, advanced nutrients would have a wall of products, It was just like in any hydro store, that was the place to be if you were a weed grower. And anyone standing in front of those nutrients, they must be growing pot too. And so you made friends with them. So there were growers that met. you know, at these times. You want to talk about the start of the wars of the seeds and, you know, whose strain was whose strains. They started in hydroponic stores.
Yeah, my friend went into all that. He was throwing shade at some people. And like, you probably heard this guy. Like, I've never heard of any of these names, man. It's all you.
And I did the first White Widow, and mine was that, you know. And my Gorilla, why do you think we have Gorilla Glue number 4? You know. And so it's, you know, but it's all those difference. But you'd see this advance with all this wall of product, and everybody be, you know, we could grow weed. And people would come in. But I would see some people come in that had, you know, a particular, and my first question, just like it is with an entrepreneur in this business, my first question is, how much money do you have? Because you can grow from going from a little garden to mountains of weeds. Okay, weed. No pun intended, but, you know, to mountains, and you can have it, but it's going to take money. Because Advanced Nutrients is going to cost you this amount of money. And then there was another company that would take the knockoff products from there and stick them into another one, and I'm going to give a shout out to Grow More, you know, who could actually, you know, make the products and do it for a lot cheaper. But you would come out with the same thing. Like I say, anytime, any grocery, as a chef, knowing a grocery store is important and vital to your business, you know, and just because it's wow and it doesn't mean that it's the best thing. But Advanced Nutrients was cannabis related, so it had a lot of people flocking to it. But it was a technical, you know, product to be able to use. And so when I had somebody small that would come into there and say, I want to grow and use this, what do? I'm going to spend my entire paycheck on this product. I would say, well, slow your roll. First off, what are you working with? How much money do you have? How much experience do you have? How much, you know, time and energy are you going to have to be able to put into this weed? Okay? And are you going to nurture it? Are you going to love it? Are you going to build it a garden? Because once you build it, you have to grow it like you're growing a baby. Okay? Because that's exactly how elite a cannabis plant is. You're growing a baby that's going to produce for you on a mountainous of things. Because if you're smart, you not only have the seeds to be planting another harvest, but you've also got the oils to be able to create medicines. You've got stock to be able to take down for clothing, and you've got, you know, leaves which you can boil up and put into edibles. And, you know, shoot, you can even cure all your dog sicknesses. Just let them chew on the stalks while you're trimming, you know. There's so many benefits and so many more, hundreds more that you can use with it. So you're putting a lot of energy into something that's going to give so much more back. Okay, how much time do you got? How much money do you have to put into it? And I'm not just speaking about plants, I'm speaking about products. Entrepreneurs and businesses, how much can you give to this industry that you want? Eventually what's going to come back is it's going to be a baby that you're going to love. Now imagine the government coming in and telling you that, oh, you've exceeded the limits of your levels of THC, which means now you have to kill all of your babies. It's a very hard thing to do. But people come into this industry thinking, I'm going to buy Advanced Nutrients and I'm going to grow and I'm going to do something that's really big and amazing. But they don't have the education. They don't have the skills, and they don't know the know-how. So the biggest flaw that Advanced Nutrients had coming back at it later, you know, they started out with the cahoots, and, you know, about 8 months into the year, you had a lot of growers coming back in and saying, this burned my garden, and this didn't do well, and my plant didn't get a pound of weed, and, you know, what's going on, and I don't understand, and these were the worst things. I had a guy who brought me back his entire line that he had purchased and had done. And I would say to people straight off the bat, don't buy and jump into something that you're not sure of exactly on how to use. This is where you find those consultants, where you find those people that are in. Anybody who's legitimately in this industry is going to give a hand up. That's the culture of cannabis, okay? The true culture of cannabis. Anybody's going to say, here, let me help you, and let me give back to my community, and let me teach you, okay? Because they understand that cannabis is something so huge and so big that it's going to require all of these people going to work. That's looking beyond corporation. That's looking at a whole universal need and what looks bigger in the picture. And that's why I say it's you know, I mean, that's it. it seems so far-fetched, but when you see things from a 360-degree view and you see how it all connects together, and you've been there to the point where, again, the highest thing that a person can get right now for permitted is getting into a manufacturing business and having, the rules. It's not just knowing what you're doing now, it's knowing what you're going to have to do in the future. And so when I say the industry hasn't caught up to where it is that we are now, because it isn't just making Rice Krispie treats and brownie treats. It's making clam chowder for prostate cancer. It's making ice cream sandwiches for people who have cancer in their mouth. It's making, chocolate bars or hard candies, or making ham hocks and beans, or pizzas or chicken and waffles, or sending people out on a daily regimen. Okay, it's food that you're preparing, and when you're doing that, you're feeding the souls of everybody, and it's hitting everyone different. You see a bigger picture in how much manufacturing, because food is limitless, just like this cannabis industry. Tell me anything that anybody does, and I'll tell you how you can do it in cannabis.
All right.
Anything.
That's what I love about what you said, how, I say, because I'm a good example, like I smoke 3 times a day. I think that's a fair average, at least for me. So yeah, and how long it takes to cultivate a good crop, like 6 months or whatever it is. Everyone should be growing weed, right? Because we can't even, I'm surprised that we're even keeping up with the amount that we're already smoking.
And in other areas, they're not. There's a shortage, and and it's not that there's enough growers to go, but you need to permit these people.
Like Ohio is a good example of that.
Very
about
good example.
The 12 companies, only 12.
Out of 400 licenses,
Something
I believe.
crazy, yeah.
Because I'm from Ohio, and so I pay very close attention, because I remember in 2017, in November 2017, they legalized edibles. I'm an edible manufacturer. I'm like, wow, and I'm thinking, but you couldn't cultivate, and there were no dispensaries, and so there was no way to be able to produce edibles, because manufacturing, of course, was illegal. So here we go with our, let's pass some legislation before we pass the ability to be able to have it in, and then we'll follow suit with regulation as we see it.
Yeah.
Which means their limited view of being able to see where it is so far behind the curve, they're never going to be able to catch up in time.
It's going to be like several years before someone explains to them, but you need to deregulate this and that, so that these things can come up and we can actually produce all of the products and this and that.
And yet the information is right underneath their fingertips.
Right.
Just like the ants that are crawling, those are your outlaw, illegal dispensaries. And instead of looking at them as trying to crush the ants, you need to get further down and discover what they're all about, so that you can understand how to make the industry rise up as fast as you need to, because time is of the urgency right now, because we are in a corrupt world that's crumbling. And so people have to look at it and think, your relationship with spirituality, this is the fight between good and evil, between whether or not our souls are corrupt, as to whether or not, and corruption is very prevalent right now. We show that in the face of our leaders, by who it is that we pick. We won't get political, but yeah. It's another day. But it's it's that big. And for where it is that you can turn. I had never thought that I would be. I'm sure a lot of people, hippies were the opposite of being political. And now it's so ironic that hippies are the ones that will actually tell you, it does have a whole lot to do with what is going on. And that's the reason why you see a lot of people who are passing our legislation with the long braids, hippies, and they're sitting there, give a shout out to OG Eddie Lepp and Richard Eastman, and people, up there doing it like Harborside and whatnot. Eventually you get it. Eventually you get to the point in this industry. So if you ask the most successful entrepreneurs in this business exactly how they feel about cannabis, it all boils down to the fact that we're helping people. That's what it gets to. When you have bud tenders and you have our kids that are working, that's the number one sought out jobs. Jobs are prevalent. you know, LA and its political view and everything is a whole nother discussion, you know, but that's something that is to the reason as to why, I mean, for me, it's my mission. It's my mission to educate and get as much information out there, because other than that, I spent a year asking myself, why do I have so much useless knowledge? I don't want to say useless anymore. Why do I have so many useful knowledge about cannabis? Why was I given this view to being able to understand this? Not only having the 360-degree view, but being so unlimited in a field. What was better to learn? Everybody eats. Everybody eats. And when you're mixing cannabis into those foods and everyone's giving you reaction, that's the best thing. As a chef, that's the best thing you want. It's the reviews that you want to hear. And so when I get more and more people that are sending me messages that are coming through and it's all positive, there's the testimony of what works and what doesn't. And it's all an experiment. It's all an experiment to see, because it's not just listening to, oh my God, that was so good, and yes, that did, and that hit the spot. It's how often did you take it? How tall are you? What is your weight? When do you take it? What's the dosage size that I'm creating? What's the product that you like the most? What's the flavors? What's the, you know? And you're asking a gazillion questions. And what's this illness that you have, and how does it react to that? And now let's tweak it and experiment and see what it does. Because these people are not just people. It's not take a box of chocolate, stick it on a counter, and then walk away and then hope the dispensary calls you the next week and says, here. No. It's about dropping off that box of chocolate and then saying, how do people like it? What's the dosage size they're taking? How many milligrams? Because it isn't about a milligram. They're trying to find a milligram, but all of that is bullshit. Okay, bleep that out or whatever, but it is. There's no better word for it. It's all bullshit. When people say to me, come to me in the stores, I'm a 25 milligram, I'm a 50 milligram, I'm looking at them and I'm thinking, this product that's 50 milligrams is not this product that's 50 milligrams. They're different products. People don't know that. All they know is that they need to find a milligram of which size they are. And so if they try a lollipop that's 25 milligrams and then they go and they decide to do a cushy punch for, you know, shout out to Andrew, a cushy punch that, you know, is coming in at, say, 10 milligrams, and they're thinking that's going to be lesser. Well, let me tell you something. It ain't cushy punch for nothing. It does pack a punch in there. And this 25 milligram, maybe cupcake that it is that they had, didn't get them to that punch that supposedly, you know, and it sends sometimes a confusion. And then people figure out, well, what's my dose? So comes the number, what's my dosage size? Your dosage size is whatever is going to get you where you need to be at the moment you need to be when. It is a take as needed basis. That's how cannabis works. It's not meant to be intoxicated. Okay? That's what goes against spiritual. It's meant to be used as an everyday product, taken as needed. Now you have to have manufacturers, you know, who are trying to fill those dosage sizes, trying to find the right thing, you know. And it's funny because you have a lot of people who have such great ideas, and sometimes their time isn't there yet. I've got people who are saying, oh my God, I created this little yogurt treat, you know, and it's going to be so healthy, and it's going to go into, you know, everybody, and every store is going to want to eat it up because I've seen no other product. But here's one question they forget to ask themselves. It's a milk product that's based on USDA standards and FDA regulations. You're not there yet. And until you get there, all of this thought and all of this money and all of this energy that you're sticking into a product hasn't even gotten off the floor, isn't even in a thought in anybody else's head except mine, you know? And I'm sure there are other people, you know, but they're so very far. You'd be amazed on how many people don't really actually think, or people who come, I've got a guy, I'm going to make a cigarette pack and it's going to have all different varieties and all different kinds of flavors of doing, you know, and it's going to be the best. The point is that it's going to have to be the best. The lasting brand of anything is whether or not you're putting out a product of integrity and smarts. And I mean, that's why Apple's number one. You know, it's thinking long before, ahead of the line about what it does by everybody's individual usage. Well, that's kind of how edibles are. Or cannabis, period. It's everybody's individual usage. How often they use it, how much. different body shapes and types, personalities, your moods go in and have an effect in it. I once told a guy, when you mix chocolate, you mix cannabis, you know why it's such a hit? Because chocolate itself carries a set of endorphins that, that set off your mood into a heightened, feeling. Now mix that in with cannabis, okay? And now you've taken that and you've taken that THC level mixed in here, and it's created a whole different effect, okay? It's how you think. That's why I say looking at your food and the things that it is that you're using are so much more important. Looking at your weed. When you're holding it up to the light and you're seeing the beautiful purples and the hues and whatnot, and you're smelling it, and you're cracking, you're already putting your senses into a good feeling. Cannabis plays in every single one of our senses, and that's how we have to create of our products, because we're all in different kinds of modes and functions and whatnot going through in life. And so I might take a couple of hits of, say, a vape pen, to just get things going, or off of my, the only way you can surely smoke cannabis in its form is through a pipe.
Right.
Okay? That's really, and an organic plant. If you really want to be the vegan of cannabis, it has to be an organic plant that's, in all its entirety organic, as Omri will allow it to be.
Right.
Because nothing is truly organic. Nothing is. And neither will cannabis. So at 0.3%, is that a right THC grade? We don't know. Here in California, it's not about a 10 milligram dosage, it's about a 45 milligram dosage. That's what gets California people off. And you know what? We're a lot more experienced smokers than Colorado is. Because we wrote the book on cannabis, And where else wrote the book is very illegal right now. So there isn't a whole lot of, progress that has been able to come out of those states, southern states, where you could end up locked up in jail for a whole, 10-8 to life, for a joint. So, that's what extreme outlaw looks like. That's what, let's go back to the Pinkerton days.
Yeah.
You may as well look at that. But, I'm sorry,
No, that was a great example.
But that's the way you kind of look at it. And here in California and cannabis and getting it off. And so it is about creating companies and everybody being able to get in. How do you get into this industry? You have to start with a whole lot of heart first. You have to understand what you're getting into, okay? Because other than that, you'll travel down a road and then you'll realize, whoa, wait a minute, this wasn't for me. Going back to that woman with the college, when I asked her how she got into the industry, she looked at me and she says, because I had a friend that knew everything but supposedly about cannabis, that wanted to open up a business and said this was the business of the future, and so this is why I got into it. She goes, but now I'm here, 63 years old, and I'm here every single day, and every day it takes me to keep going. I've given everything. I can't get out of the business. I've given my home, I've given my life, I've given everything. So I'm stuck. But I'm not stuck and bitter and angry. I'm upset because I know that what I have is a good thing. And I know that the people that come through that talk to me, what I'm doing is a good thing. What upsets me is that I'm limited from being able to do that good thing. And that's what kills me, because I've given everything to it on a false promise, or a promise that puts me at a hold. And that's what makes me mad. People do need to understand of what is needed. So when people come to me and they say, instead of having a product, and I ask what your resources are, businesses aren't just based on a product that's needed in cannabis, okay? Because there's only so much brownies and Rice Krispie treats that people really want to turn around and, and be able to buy, or so many, putting out. You're always still going to have strains, flower people. Flower's never going to go away. That's who the true connoisseur is. And technically your client, for all those people in marketing who ask me, what's your ideal client? My ideal client is the person that comes every single day that, technically uses it, but they're not using it, like, oh, I'm going to use it for the weekend. They're using it for a daily. They're using it to get through that day, okay? It's not for everybody. Not everybody needs to smoke 3 times a day. Some people can go 3 days without smoking, or eating or ingesting or doing cannabis and carry on. So it's, again, as needed. When you're creating a product, you want to create something that is on a daily, okay? Something could be used. I once said this to a manufacturer about 3 or 4 years ago who came to me with a product, and I said, you have to see, he wanted to make gigantic sizes of, and I'm like, nobody's going to buy that. Because then you have to finish that whole gigantic thing, and nobody wants to be able to do that before you can get. Nobody sits there, everybody tries to go for the buzz. Everybody wants the buzz at first. That's what making smoking products or eating gummies, candies, and things that hit, things that are THC, because that's where THC is the buzz. And CBD, that's the real medicine. That's the real that comes in. But it's only one compound of the real medicine. There are over 400 different elements that make up cannabis that are still yet undiscovered. So of course, I'm going to be for an all full spectrum, because as far as I'm concerned, there's so much. Just like feeding everybody. When somebody says, where's your menu? I don't have one. I can't give a menu, because your taste buds are going to change from week to week. Nobody wants to eat baked potatoes every single day of the night. Eventually you get sick of it. And so you need different products and different things. And how many times do you need them? At least on an average, once a day, 3 times a day. So you may, it might be an edible that you take at nighttime. It might be a quick puff that you take in during the mid-start section of the day. And, we're going to start your morning off, smoking a whole joint, doing your yoga or getting into your psyche, and you're going to carry that through to find a balanced life, because that's what cannabis is about. And that's what companies, if they start basing their products on that, are going to see long-term stability in their products if they're able to branch out. Some businesses like Kiva have been able to, they went from straight chocolate bar, she started with only 4 different flavors, won my heart because she did it so well, and that's what it was about. It was about putting your time and your energy into your company and giving the best for people. And it wasn't just the experience of pushing a product out that was going to get you stoned. It was pushing out a product that you're going to fall in love with. That's what made CC&C Edible so great. It was the taste that everybody fell in love with. It was the variety that everybody fell in love with, because it was limitless and there was something for everybody. And there was something, red velvet cake on one day, or, chocolate chip, and doing, pumpkin pie on another, or like I said, whether it's, doing Taco Tuesdays and sticking it into your hot sauce, and, different ways and varieties. I mean, you can imagine, wherever you can imagine, that's where you can take cannabis. So, when you think about only 12 people in Ohio being licensed to produce for, how many people?
The whole state,
It's ridiculous to think on how. So how do you build? You have to grow those up. So when I hear government officials say, we don't know what it looks like, I'm telling you what it looks like. Every day, 3 times a day. Now you have to fill that need, because that's just the average person. Now find a whole bunch of above average people. Those are all those people that are going to volunteer to be clinical trials,
right?
Because they're like, put me to the test. Yeah. Let me show you how much I can smoke.
Try to kill me. Right.
Bring it on.
Kill me with weed. Bring it on. Let's see what we can do.
And the only thing really thinking is their head is they can smoke as much weed as they could give, and that's okay, because guess what? It'll all be free.
Yeah. So try to kill me. Let's fucking try it.
And who doesn't want government weed? Just even say that they had government weed. I mean, it is. It's a culture, and I once had a reporter ask me that question at one time too, trying to find the cannabis culture and understand it. And just like today with this sermon, I would tell people, I can't. We learn by 3 different ways, and one is by explanation. The other is by experience, and the other is by example. And so with explanation, I can explain all the great things and benefits of cannabis, but I can't explain it if you've never tried it. You'll never understand the explanation unless you've tried it. And so when you're taking, as one councilwoman told me, it's the higher powers to be. Those are the people we have to convince. And so if you're taking those higher powers to be that don't smoke cannabis, how can you really explain all of what we just talked about to them, and especially in a 2-minute window?
Yeah, it's impossible.
Virtually impossible.
Yeah.
This is why I never got up there I would sit there and watch and listen and learn and absorb and have my grievances and, sit there and think, if you would just, and afterwards I'd make introductions to everybody that would be up on a panel, to say to them, I'm just a ghost. But I could never stand in front of a group of people with a 2-minute window to explain everything that I know so that they can get the grander, bigger picture of what needs to happen with cannabis.
And the problem is, like, if they don't, because if they don't smoke at all, or if they never have, then it's like, they just eat drugs, drug talk, whatever it is.
Exactly.
And then, like, if you manage to get them to smoke, like, maybe they're the kind of person who freaks out the first time, and
it's that Maureened out experience, or you have that reefer madness effect.
Right.
Everybody's just thinking, because in the first time, short-term memory isn't a bad thing. God put the short-term memory in so everybody wouldn't be angry at each other.
Yeah.
So everybody wouldn't think about the things that have happened to them and dwell on that. Like we say, it's very hard to have an argument after you smoke, take a couple, just before you're getting ready, go away, smoke a couple hits, come back and try to get into an argument. I dare you. It was put there for those particular reasons. It was put there to bring laughter, because this is why cannabis was here. It was here to heal us. And everybody knows that you heal better when your body is relaxed, when you're receiving joy, when you're laughing and you're bringing that in. There's a whole lot of medical science that will attribute to all of these things that can happen. Where they list is, like I said, where they think something is bad in that short term, you have to actually flip the perspective of that and see it actually as a good thing, okay? And that is because a lot less people would be angry. A lot less people would be judgmental. A lot less people would be quick to make an assumption. And
more people would be reflective, generally understanding.
Yeah, compassion.
Yeah.
Which is the basis of cannabis culture. Compassion. Aren't we all to be like Jesus? We cultivated 40 acres. So we had 3 large gardens, and we also built hydroponic, organics hydroponic on the back of Harbor Area Caregivers Club and HACCNC. Okay, so we did those. In Piece of Green, we did most of the cultivation away from that, but at the time that was before regulation came in for us to having to. But part of regulation in the medical marijuana for dispensing, the regulations that they did for LA was that you had to, if you were a dispensary, you had to grow off from that dispensary, okay, and provide. That was what made it easier for us also to have plants for our client, for our, members.
Okay, wait. So that's. So I was going to that. That's something that I was kind of wondering. So if you're like running a dispensary, like is it? I imagine it being basically impossible for you to grow your own supply unless you have like.
The only way you can survive as a dispensary is to grow your own.
Okay.
Every business needs to be contained within itself. Every
But
business needs to look at itself as being, you don't have to own the picks and shovel shop, but you do need to grow the cultivation. If you're going to be a dispensary, other than that, it turns into a capital market, okay?
Yeah.
So outside of us having 80 acres in the Emerald Triangle and having 40 acres in the Central Valley and having a 2,600-foot grow in the back, we also have 5 other contracted growers that I put on contractors' licenses that would grow organic, that had their own separate gardens that we would go in, inspect, help supply materials and teach to cultivate, and then take those products that we also brought in, so it brought in different varieties. But the only way you could sustain having 40 different varieties and being one of the top 10 collectives in LA and having that, a 7,000 member base, in order to have that, you had to grow your own to be able to bring it in. Other than that, a lot of money was going out the door.
Right.
But, everything took to sustain it.
And would you say, like, because you said you were part of the collective, like, would you say you probably have to be part of the collective, right? Or a collective, some kind
We
of...
were the collective. So when I say we owned 360, it was simultaneously.
Yeah,
it wasn't one thing after the other the other. It was everything all together. So it was not only having a hydroponics shop, for where we also had the dispensary, and we had the grows. We also had the cultivation garden, and then we also had the edible manufacturing, and we had products that I would mentor other people in that would bring other products into the shop. And when I did HACCNC, I was turning that originally into a wholesale dispensary that would only meet shops on that basis, okay? But given legislation and what we went through, we ended up turning that into another dispensary, so it ended up being a 50-50 deal. Half for our client base, and the other half was client, manufacturers. So we were doing wholesale. I was always in the wholesale industry. I'm still a wholesaler in the industry. And so this is where you see those bigger, and it goes into corporations. So when trying to understand where it was going to go to next, at that time it was harder to be able to get investors to understand the multitude of what you were doing. From selling the picks and shovels and teaching people how to grow to being able to pull those in, because your dispensary was also based, the only way you could feed the dispensary and the habit of the individual, each member, okay, knowing how often that is, the only way that you could see yourself doing that is everybody had to grow. We had patients, originally it was giving a plant, teaching them how to grow, and then when that plant grew up, they would give back half of that donation into the dispensary, the collective.
Right.
Then it was mainly collectives. And that's what it was. It was a collective that came together to be able to produce for the good of the community, as it should be, as it was built. And that's the only way that you can sustain such. Yeah,
because I've wondered that, like, because that gets just from my friend who grew, like, I'm like, man, if this is all the work you got to do to create, like, this many, like, first of all, you got to be like a full-time farmer to cultivate all these crops, and then, to fill a dispensary, you got to have a lot to sell to people, basically, and
it's
so you
got
gotta.
The products.
Yeah.
You're never going to run out. If the entire United States decided to go ahead and legalize, you would never run out. In fact, that's when you get the game on. Then Canada can unleash, because Canada's already trying to figure out how to filter in, because that's how fast it grows. When I explain that to somebody, I go, look at Canada. I said, now they've outgrown. When you saw Oregon outgrow, their biggest problem, oh my God, we don't know what we're going to do with all this weed now. When I saw the tribal community come up, and they're like, okay, they're trying to sway the BCC into letting them be able to start selling, not selling to the states personally, but actually giving the weed to the people for the state, and you could do whatever you want with it, because they had created their own economy within themselves. I've seen that. We did it in LA legally by owning a 360 and putting that all together. When it came to it, I never needed investors.
Right.
Because the money was always created as long as you had gardens. And you always had gardens because it came to collective as a collective community. Because when this guy's garden is finished and done, and he's already turned in his crop, then there's another crop that's going to come in, and another crop, another crop. When you can't ride the waves, that you'll notice that when you go into places, you'll have a whole lot of indicas, and you only have a few sativas, or vice versa. Because it's all about the grace of growing, and how that grows in tides, and with the and what you're planting in. It's knowing the farmer's almanac is important to a grower, and how the temperature changes. So climate is everything of what you have to start to pay attention to when you're growing crops of green. And
I know. Marijuana's crazy, just like all the strict conditions you need, and I'm not even going to get into it.
But that's why I would tell people when they come in, it's your baby. The best example that I could give to people was you got to treat it like your baby. Because
it's no joke.
It is no joke. It's going to grow. Any plant can grow. You can take ruderalis and throw it right across the fields and it's going to grow no matter what. But how it grows is how it's going to make a difference, how much love you get it. So if your friend says, hey, we're going to grow a plant, I grew it this, and I got a pound off, and guess what? You're going to get, here's a seed, you're going to get the exact same thing. You're not. You're going to take it and you're going to put it in a whole different other area with a whole different other shading and a lighting and,
like
you know.
nature versus
and
nurture.
it's two totally different gardens. We would do this. My husband would cultivate strains and come up and give seeds to, you know, 4 or 5 different gardeners, and we'd send them out and they'd grow and they'd all come back with a plant and it all looked different. Same seed, same mom, all different because of each gardener. That's the same way that cannabis works within each one of us, all differently.
And it's funny, it's like you have the farm and the farmer, so it's like the society and the parents basically. That is a fair
it's family.
metaphor, calling it a baby.
Yeah. It's a and your you know, plants when they get up to be this, you're calling them teenagers. You know, we have your whole set of language. You got to change the whole dictionary. You got to change you got to change the encyclopedia. There's so much that has to be changed now with cannabis that it's insane. It's just insane. And we have to gather all that information up and teach all of these people, doctors, lawyers, you know, down to electricians. You know, I can tell you when each kind of industry started to get into the industry, started taking recognition. I remember when Wall Street came in. I remember when marketing came in. I remember, you know, when you have people that are coming up, you're watching a world being built, an entirely different world built upon cannabis, which is completely opposite of corporation.
Right.
Everything begins with a C. That's why I cut the C.
I noticed but you do. Smoked. Am I saying the same word again, or?
But it's, you know, when you see things from that scope, you're seeing a bigger. I used to call it it's not standing on shoulders of giants, because we are at this time and age those giants. You know, when you find those people that have been in this industry for so long that are sitting there and screaming, okay, there's a message that has to be told to the world. And that message is, this is the battle between good and evil right now. And cannabis is the weapon. And if you wield cannabis in the right way, then it's going to actually be able to change all of what we considered was wrong, that we are all being made apparent of now. Okay? Everybody's wakening up, but everybody's got questions. But nobody can see those bigger pictures because it's, you know, just coming out of those shells for the first time. I love the hydroponic industry because all I had to do was talk to gardeners and we talk plants. Now, as an entrepreneur, you were able to come in and you could bring those in, but one of the things I loved the most was talking plants. When you're in a dispensary and a collective, you talk healthcare. Right. You talk about the benefits and the joys of what people do, and you get to know them. It's a people person, okay? It is a totally people person business. And you get to know those people and their things, because when people are coming to you for their health care, they're bearing their souls. When people are coming to you for food, they're giving you their souls. You know, you're getting at the whole truth of everything. And that's the seed that total cannabis plants is truth. That's why it changes people's perspective, and that's why it's the number one enemy to corruption. You know, people really wake up and then they understand that usage, and that's just in a bright, beautiful world that's right on the horizon, but only if we know how to get there and what to do. And so originally when you come to me and you say, you know, how do you get into this industry? The reason that you carry on this way is because you have to understand first why you're getting into this industry, okay? Because if you're getting into this industry just to make money, to get ahead, to be able to do, then by all means, build a product, let somebody do it, take it. But I'm going to tell you right now, your streets are being paved with sand. And eventually what's going to happen is it's all going to fall apart because it's not built on truth. Not the way the industry is right now. If that makes sense.
You answered a question that I was going to ask you about.
Okay.
All that, but how you? Because the guy who I still haven't interviewed, but my friend's uncle, they were just devastated by the last year's wildfires actually, and now this new set that just happened. I haven't talked to my friend in like a few weeks. So I'm kind of scared.
Now he does have a right in being able to seek some sort of. This is where insurance companies, when the insurance commissioner came in, see, we had to. I sold insurance. I held an insurance license when I lived in Arizona. And so I understood when I was building my company and looking for insurance companies to come in and insure my collectives, you know, it was, insurance companies didn't know anything about the cannabis industry you're doing. Most of your underwriters were coming from out of state, okay, which I would always ask, where are the underwriters from? Oh, they're somewhere in Connecticut or Massachusetts or what. These were people who would only insure high-risk people, okay? The problem is do they play by California regulation and law? So my issue was to build it on truth. I need an insurance company that was going to be built inside of California where my businesses were, so that I could make sure that it was going to, you know, protect. There's no crop coverage for what they have because of the, you know, fires and whatnot that can be. That's the reason why legalization mainly falls with building in warehouses, in buildings, okay, as opposed to if you're out, you know, now since all of this, okay, this was back when, and but since all of this, you now have insurance companies that have to look into crop insurance, look into being able to build. If he has it, he has rights. As a 40-year vet, I can tell you, I would love to have a conversation with him. Be like talking to Eddie Lab, okay? And there's that joy that comes out of it. But I know that with his heart in there, things aren't the way they were then. Now you can come out a little bit more into saying, and it's sad. I want to say that I just recently read that because of all the fires and whatnot, because when I'm hearing the fires and the buildings burning and we're talking about the legal industry and where companies are going, in my mind, the first thought is, now you have all these fires that are burning their crops, so not only are they on a hurry up and wait, but now they just had their entire crop devastated. Yeah. Now they've just lost everything, and you have the smoke ventilation, and then what are they going to do? Destroy all those plants? And then you're going to become a shortage. Did anybody think about the electricity that just got shut off in all of these places that are manufacturing and doing, you know, hydroponics and whatnot? Is, you know, these are the things as a grower, what comes to first play. Just like when they gave Riverside, oh, we'll give you Riverside, you guys can grow all you want out in the desert. Where's the water? Yeah. That just gave way to the municipal companies, you know, feeding another hand, you know, of big dollar corporation, is because now everybody has to buy it. You know, for us as growers, our thing is, okay, that's fine. We're going to go buy a truck, and then we're going to go down there, and we're going to be able to buy our water and ship our own water in. But you know how much water you're going to have to feed in order to grow that many plants? Exactly. You know, my husband is one that built irrigations on, we have 40 acres of land. You know, we didn't even consume all of it to build the massive gardens that we did. But he literally had to build, you know, he went and did 2 tours in Mexico and to, you know, some farmers down there and helped them build irrigation systems, and came back and was able to put in and start building our own. This is where we got our education. You know, it's not like you can go to anything and try and figure out how to build a hydroponic garden, you know. So where did you go? You went to the big companies, same companies that are growing alfalfa, you know, places like Botanicare and Advanced Gardening and you know, the good old boys, what we called in the hydroponic industry. And you know, these were people that were coming. I had an alfalfa gardener call me one time. It was in Pennsylvania or something like that, and he called me and he says, and this is when the fires were raging there, and he said, and I don't know if it's Pennsylvania, but you know, somewhere in that gardening belt, and fires were raging there, and he calls me and he says, I don't know how I'm going to recoup for my garden. I need to build. And he goes, how am I going to do this? He goes, so I've looked into hydroponics. He goes, and I met with somebody who worked for, you know, Advanced Hydroponics, and he goes, and they told me to contact you to, you know, maybe get into, and so this is what we did, or vice versa. I think I actually shipped him through Advanced, you know, because they're the people that are supplying your big garden, your grows. The same people that are in this industry are the same people that have always been into this industry. that are creating these products that we're going to our gardening shops and we're being able to put them in. We perfected, ingredients, nutrient, when you see a recipe for a garden, we came in and we perfected them as we were playing around with our seeds, and growing big gardens and that whole thing I told you about the, gardeners getting into the strains and whatnot, that's how we perfected the plants. That's how we came up with strains. That's how we, mine is better than yours. And so you have to change, but how do you get a garden back up again? It is hydroponically. When you're trying to, it is the fastest way. NASA has a hydroponic, and NASA had a hydroponic station since we opened up the hydro store in 1995, and in 96, 97, after they had passed, that's when we were getting harassed by the police, going around and saying, and I used to tease them about, who's got the biggest grow station? It's NASA. Wonder what they're growing up there. And those are all done between under secret. Well, of course you can't, because hydroponics is the gardening of the future. Because when they kill off this planet, the only way you are going to be able to grow your greens is indoors with the climate change.
Yeah.
And so this is the gardening of the future that we have right now. Can we slip and switch and change that? Heck yeah, we can. And we do that by unleashing gardens everywhere and letting people be able to grow and take all of that product and turn it into exactly that product. Things that are used on a daily that are biodegradable. I mean, like I said, it touches on everything. That's why it's so hard to contain cannabis. Yeah. It's so hard to contain and stay into one sector when you've seen so many other sectors. You're like, wow, it's an eye-opening, And you see things. So, of course, sometimes I sounded like a crazy person, which is why it was always hard to find investors, because I thought, I'm talking multiple businesses all gathered up in one to a single investor can only focus on one product. And that was very hard for me to do. And, that's when it was like, I need somebody who's owned 10 or 20 businesses so that they can understand the mindset of where you can go with cannabis. Because it's so big. It's limitless. It's limitless. And so it isn't that way. I always used to say, I don't trust politicians that don't smoke or people that are doing it because they're never going to understand it. Yeah. It isn't that I don't trust. It's just that I don't trust their judgment. Mm-hmm. Because until you can really understand it, how can you make regulations about it? Because there's always going to be a loophole.
It's hard to trust those people because they're hypocrites, and if you like alcohol, it's a vice, and it's more dangerous, so you don't even know what you're talking about.
And then it all leads down to where we're at now, corruption.
Yeah.
Because eventually, then it becomes about the green dollar and not the green plant.
I actually wanted to ask you about that. Have you been part of a collective, and you're getting products from other people that you're working with and stuff? Have you ever received anything tainted or just bad products? Because I know there was the Dr. J edibles years ago. That was apparently it was just just no.
Because I actually met them once
really?
at a thing, and they were And you see so many people who go up and so many people who go down, and there's so many companies that you think are big companies that are doing it all the right way, and they're not. I've had so many people that have walked up to me and going to council meetings and then saying and coming, oh my God, and you're CCC, edibles, and can you? I'm now finding out how many people are actually following and I'm doing edibles because of you, and it's like wow, because you don't ever sometimes step outside long enough to realize the things you're doing unless you stay grounded. And when those people come in and they're saying this, and then I start asking the question, well, are you in a commercial? Some of them weren't even in commercial kitchens. Mm-hmm. They're got dogs and they've got kids that are around them, and they don't even have a food handler's permit. They know nothing about food. All they know is that I make really damn good brownies, and my friends like them, and and so therefore now I need to create a business. And that's, coming in. But then I'll start shooting them some questions. I had a guy who wanted to open up a kitchen and have multiple people come into it. Now they've passed legislation where you can do this, but here's the problem with that, is that you have multiple people that are coming into a kitchen, and yet you're trying to separate with so many rules and regulations, you know, that if something were to go wrong in one company, all other companies would be, you know, have to kind of face a side eye, you know, because you're being inbuilt. So therefore, it, you know, each one really needs to be individual. But you know, there are people that are, you know, never been into commercial kitchens. They don't know how to run one. They don't know the experience that comes behind that food. But this is a day and age that's created such chaos and corruption that anybody is creating a product and sticking it on the market. And the only education you can give on that is you have to take everything with literally, you know, a looking at it. You know, just because someone's handing you, you know, I heard a story about a sesh where people were handing you edibles and taking them. Well, the first thing is never, any place I've ever been to where somebody's handed me an edible, first off, as a commercial chef, you know, my first thought is, it's not packaged. Yeah. Okay? I don't know where it's been before it's come to me. Okay? Yeah. And even though, you know, you have, I'm weird. My first thought is I'm always going to be weary about it. Always going to be weary about it because I'm, you know, trained in you know, bacteria and different forms of, you know, of what can, temperatures, you know, time and temperature. You know, that's my background. And so I'm thinking of all these things and I'm looking at these products. So I, you know, usually will go and decipher, but I would always, it was, you know, just like you never want to pass a joint, you know, never be the one that says, oh no, I don't want to, you know, as a gesture, you would still take the edibles, but you want to take them and you want to take them home. You want to take them home, you want to put them into a place where if you're going to experiment, but if it's something within question, it's like Halloween candy. Yeah. Okay? You spread it out. You look at it. You look for the pinholes. You look for the things that are wrong with it. And then if you don't find those things, you know, and you know the company, you know the brand, or you trust the friend, you know, that's growing its own weed in his own backyard, you know, so you're already a witness because every time you've gone over there, he's told you how big his, you know, excuse me, his plant's going to get. But as you're going through, you know, you have to look at this industry and the branding. The only true thing you can do is backed by the brands, okay? And then the brands, you have to look into it, okay? Because just because they're a big name doesn't necessarily make it so that they were actually somebody who's baking it the way that they should. Hence, when I found these big companies that would come up and say, oh my gosh, can you mentor us and can you do this? And I look, well, what are you working with? Okay. Oh, well, we're out of our home, and you know, my cousin Bobby here, he does all the packaging and the labeling, and he sticks it in a joint. And I'm thinking to myself, but you guys are everywhere. And then I find out it sure does put a whole different taste in my mouth when I walk into a dispensary and then I see that product sitting there, and knowing how it's made turns my stomach as a, you know. And so you have to think, but no, you want to bring products that are in most collectors and dispensaries are built on a basis, you know, especially when you're dealing with an outlaw one, is built on a basis of family. If you're bringing a product that's in, now the illegal industry is choking out any, you know, legal places cannot give to illegal, okay? Manufacturers cannot come in, okay? And so therefore, but you have a demand still for this. So you're going to have people that are making and doing. You know, mine is you have to find yourself a reputable baker. You have to find somebody that's in that industry that can be able to produce some products that if you are going to bring them in, and again, it's like the Halloween candy, okay? And knowing if it's a loose bag and it's got no labeling and there is nothing behind it that, you know, gives you any kind of security, then you better think twice about whether or not you're going to put that into your body, okay? Because you've been given examples of people and things that have happened when that comes that way. And then you have to automatically think, just like with the vape products, you know, this is really cool to have a little nice metal thing that might have a character on it or something like that that you can carry around and you can smoke pretty much anywhere. But does anybody think about how much nicotine or THC is going into that product and how much somebody is actually vaping it up? And taking it in? And does anybody think about the little metal cartridges that are being mass produced from China, you know, and shipped over here? And China, who we know have very little manufacturing regulations, not as strict as California.
There's like people getting hospitalized now because of some chemical.
Medical, you have to think as an engineer.
Right.
Then I start to think how the product is made.
Right.
You have a coil
Yeah.
that's heating up inside metals, and you're smoking that.
Yeah.
You have to think about all those little tiny particles of metal that are getting into your lungs.
And like every little, exactly what chemicals are in this liquid.
Exactly.
It's flavored like bubble gum. What is this?
Exactly. It's every little tiny detail and ingredient that goes into that product that you have to think about that's causing the harm. But know this, anything that has to do with cannabis in its pure form is not harmful.
Yeah.
Only until man gets involved. Then when man gets involved, now you've got to change in how it's doing. Hence, all pills were an herb at one point. Most of them, back in the day.
Yeah.
And now you have those. Now it's gotten to the billion. So if you want to look at how cannabis is going to be when it's totally corporized, you're looking at a pill that's being given. And what's involved in that pill is going to have some negative effects. Just like that big THC that you're puffing on 3 times a day, and bringing in, which is probably at an 800 maximum. Remember, there's no CBD involved, okay, in most pens, because the whole cell of the cannabis is to get you high. And you're smoking that THC. It's like I say with hydroponics and organic gardening. In hydroponics, I love hydroponics. I love it so much. I love it. But I'd say, yeah, it's a great process and you can get it really fast. And it's really cool scientific chemistry stuff, okay? But if you really have to look at the pod, does it really taste good? Yeah. And then when I tell people, here's the difference of how you know. If you take a hydroponic tomato and you take an organic tomato, which one are you going to want the most? Which one is going to be the connoisseur? Is always going to be in the organic because the taste is there. The nutrients that went into it, the love that came from, from a source that you can only try to replicate,
It's funny to think of it like kind of like how once factory farming or industrial agriculture, let's say, and everyone's putting the Monsanto pesticides that grow as much as we can, and then only now recently is everyone wants organic. I feel like once weed becomes highly accepted, will it kind of fall back like we have with food? Like it's going to become highly corporatized and it's going to get devolved into all these other forms that aren't as healthy or as natural. But then,
that is exactly what's happened.
Yeah.
It's not something of it's what's already happened.
But it's like with us connoisseurs, but there's still people who are rejecting it. But once it becomes federally legal, I still feel like it's going to take at least 5 years or more for the general masses to kind of go, oh, okay, well, let's go.
Exactly.
Let's stop vaping. Let's go back to smoking.
Everybody will. That's why I say with the flower, there isn't, when people think, okay, well, eventually, is it going to grow out of? That's the answer, is that you're seeing it already being able to grow out of the communities that it's legally being grown in. So when I say Oregon, the tribal, those are just examples of people who have been complaining that they've got too much weed, okay? And yet you have other places that are complaining, we don't even have a drop, And not true, but because there's always going to be an outlaw market, always. But, whenever there's a need, like they say, there will be a way. But that's the point. But if you were to proportion it evenly, you're always going to be growing enough. And that's a lesson I learned, because no matter how many unlimited products that I can make in a week's time and get those all delivered out, I would always think I never had enough. But for some reason, I always tended to have enough, just enough to be able to fill everybody just for that week, though. Because the next week, it was on a daily rotation, and that's how fast the industry moves. It's creating an unlimited amount of products and being able to get those out. Now, mind you, this was done on a small scale. Little old me, baking as many different products as maybe anywhere from, let's just take the little dosage sizes, and making anywhere from maybe about 3,000 of those, okay? And this was back when we were still outlawed, okay? 3,000 dosages that would at least go through, and that's an average, and that would be going through every single week. to maybe about 5 to 10 collectives. And even then, it was very hard for me to keep up. Very hard for me to keep up. On that rotation, if you multiply that with the rest of the nation and think in terms of how much an average dosage comes, you always have to be creating. And that's the reason why for 15 years, every single Thursday, I couldn't get off the hamster wheel if I wanted to. Because it's that much creation that goes through, and when there isn't one, there's always another. And I'm only feeding a very tiny minuscule of people compared to what can be.
Right.
Multiply me and all the amounts that it is that I can do and try and feed everybody, you'd still be on a weekly rotation of being able to put fresh products in there on a weekly basis. So when you're coming to buy $5,000 of chocolate and stick that on the counter and only go through that for once a month, it's bigger than that. It's way bigger than that. And that's only a minuscule amount of people. Imagine if everybody was able to get cannabis. There would never be a shortage, and there would never be anybody out of business because you're constantly moving. 15 years, that's a good record for a company, okay, to be constantly in business. So when somebody says, I've only gotten started and I've only put this out, I've been in here for 8 months and already I'm at a standstill, okay, the only reason you're at a standstill is because regulation is holding you back. That's where regulation is holding me back from being able to. So at this point, that's why I figured, well, I guess I must be educated.
Yeah, that's all that's left.
That's all that's left in the end. Because as soon as that you can educate and people can start to understand, now you can have more people becoming aware to be able to change that legislation, that regulation, to be able to change what is happening in this world. And the proof will be in the pudding when later down the line you've got all of California growing and all of Canada growing, and right then and there you're going to start to see the climate change, and you're going to see a lot more nicer people, and you're going to see a lot of wealth starting to build. The proof is in the pudding, and you're never going to be. And that's why I can say to investors, I'm not looking for somebody who's going to carry me through a whole investment. You're just usually looking for somebody to give you just an initial start, enough money to buy enough weed to be able to flip and turn that and multiply it into millions. That's all you need. And because it feeds itself. I always just say, as long as I have supplies, I can support myself. As long as you have supplies. And that's what it is that we can't kill, which we're doing with the current legislation, is killing that industry. And that's a sad thing because we're giving way to corruption. And that only becomes of a lack of awareness and a lack of education. So yeah, in the end, that's what's left to conquer. You can't fit everything that it is that you learned in 25 years and more into a 20-minute conversation or even a 2-hour conversation.
Yeah.
I'm skipping around.
Yeah.
That's not even everything that it is that we've done and what I've seen. There's so much more that has to be expressed and shown, and that's really the message. And I love talking to people who have been in the industry for so long because they're the only other people I can have an intelligent conversation about cannabis with. That get it. And then you can start talking about all the amazing things without having to keep talking about the basics over and over and over and over again. That's why I always say it's very hard to me when someone says, what do you do or what have you done? It's very hard for me to put all of that in because it's really not about me. It's about what I've learned. It's about the experiences that I've had. It's about what I've seen. And it's about the examples that it is that, So, yeah.
All right, well, perfect.
We cut it here?
It looks like people are calling.
I know.